gains, it also has experienced
make sure that they are investing in meeting certain of the important priorities of government, including job creation. And then to my right, it's CFO, Shabeka, who will also be making a presentation much later in relation to our finances. And then next to him is Dr. Evelyn Masocha, responsible for company and corporate legislation, an area in the work of the DTIC, where we look at the legal framework that our companies and economic citizens have to work under. And then from time to time, we will do revisions of the various pieces of legislation. And sometimes we introduce new legislation in order to improve the work environment of all those stakeholders. Next to her is Nikki Greer. Nikki is in the negotiations, international negotiations, part of the work program of the DTIC. This is where all our trade agreements are structured, and the work that we need to do with industry to make sure that we get the best in terms of regulatory framework for trade. That's the area of this lab. The next to her is Horamaka, who is in the CFO's office, also assisting us with finances, and then support from the DM's office, and Tulu, who I'm sure needs no further introduction, and also assisting us with the parliamentary work program and liaison with Parliament. And Ms. Wongi, you may not see her. She's just out of the plane of the camera. Wongi is in the office of the DG, also responsible for the type of planning that we will be talking about today. We have introduced everybody in the meeting. So thank you, Chair. Take us straight on to the presentation. Here we are presenting the DTIC 2022, 2023 APP.
DG, can I give you until 3:15 to present?
Yes, Chair.
That will be 1 hour.
Absolutely, Chair. That's fine. That's perfect.
Thank you so much.
I may just the Chair coming much earlier. The APP is informed by the country's imperative to address high unemployment, poverty, and inequality, and also the urgent need to improve economic performance and inclusive growth. It builds on the innovations which the department started introducing, particularly regarding the integration of the work within the department. You will see that there's a lot more joint KPIs that you will see in the presentation. In this APP, what we've done differently is that we've taken previous 17 outcomes and consolidated them into 3 succinct outcomes, bringing greater coherence and also coordination in the work of the DTIC. The 3 outcomes are industrialization, which is meant to promote jobs and raise income, and transformation to build an inclusive economy and a capable state to ensure improved impact of public policies, including some of the work that we will be presenting to members today. So on the next slide, which is slide 4, we set out the fact that this annual report, or rather annual performance plan, it's a plan that takes forward the goals of the sixth administration. We've already indicated what makes it different from the previous plans, but we do maintain that it is continuity as far as the priorities that have been set before are concerned, and some of those priorities include building dynamic industries through partnerships, expanding exports through the AFCFTA and trade policy measures, improving the climate for investment and the level of fixed investment in the country, spatial equity through targeted policies, transformation of the economy, and building a capable state, all of which I will elaborate just shortly. The APP takes into account the refocus to economy, takes into account the focus on economic resilience, a focus that was introduced in 2020 APP. It builds on the focus on creating greater integration across the 10 DTIC programs, which I will also elaborate on quite shortly, taking into account the 18 DTIC entities as per what was introduced in the 2021 APP. Then on slide 5, we just reiterate the fact that this APP also takes into account, and it is aligned and informed by the February 2022 SONA priorities. And the 3 outcomes that we've spoken to are industrialization, transformation, and capable states, and that the KPIs have been significantly rewritten and expanded based on past implementation. Again, here, just highlighting the importance of continuous improvement, which is really a mantra for the DTIC. So the SONA in 2022 set out a post-COVID recovery and reconstruction vision based on reforming the economy and rebuilding institutions. This new APP takes into account a number of those SONA priorities. Those include scaling up investment levels and local industrial production, including of health products and infrastructure, focusing on sectors including social economy, agro-processing. In the agro-processing sector of interest is sugar, poultry, hemp, cannabis, fruit manufacturing, fruits, and then for manufacturing, it's furniture, steel, clothing, and textile, and then the important and growing area of work in the global business services sector. This is where we help companies with what is ordinarily called back office and work, including IT, financial services, and those services will be offered for multinationals, but they would be offered here in South Africa. Then the rest of the priorities include climate change. Here the focus is on renewable energy, on electric vehicles and green hydrogen, implementation of the AFCFTA, youth employment, promoting small businesses, and spatial equity through the district development model, combating corruption and crime, including addressing the challenge of scrap metal theft, and as was alluded to by the president, promoting the ease of doing business, including cutting red tape, building a capable, ethical, and developmental state, and the call for a deeper partnership through social compacts. Again, further priorities here, the APP would contribute to the President's SONA's mission, which would be to revitalize our economy and end the inequity and injustice that impedes progress. In response to the President's call for a comprehensive social compact to grow our economy to create jobs and combat hunger, the DTIC has adopted a social compacting approach across all programs through initiatives like master plans and export networks. I'll talk about those shortly. In response to the President's call to cut red tape across government, every DTIC program will be required to identify and report on concrete steps to streamline operations. In response to the President's call to reinforce Africa's health sovereignty, the DTIC continues to build the COVID-19 economy into a sustainable base for a rejuvenated or reinvigorated health care sector, including through a rapid expansion of vaccine productions right here in South Africa. In response to the President's call to restore the effectiveness of core network infrastructure such as energy and logistics, the DTIC is supporting projects such as the RIP and Transnet's reform drive. The DTIC has already contributed to the President's announcement of the 4th South African Investment Conference with pledges of 336, let's call it 337 billion in new investments. We recognize in this APP that we are building on our strengths and learning from our weaknesses. And we reflect in slide 8 some of our successes which were achieved during the past financial year, which are now a basis upon which we can build even better. So those successes would include the rollout of a more locally made healthcare product sector and turnaround in key sectors of manufacturing. They include the partnership with firms to improve investment and job creation as part of reciprocal commitments when utilizing public resources. Targeted use of competition and trade measures were warranted by evidence. You would see we would reflect a lot more of the work that we're doing as far as research is concerned, and flexibility and agility by our entities in providing support, be it as we saw it with the July 2021 unrest in KZN, and then of course the further levels of crisis that we have seen, including the Ukraine one, Russia-Ukraine, that we are going through now, and even the floods that have now engulfed KZN. So we're building on what we've learned, including with this previous crisis, to strengthen our implementation going forward. We're doing that mindful that we also have weaknesses that we need to address, and those include the fact that there's uneven local economic development, and I'm sure members, as you have previously, you will raise that as an important area of concern. We are now putting in place a framework that will assist us to start addressing that in a much more pointed manner. Weak export promotion connection with industrialization, that most of our sectors, because of the size of our market, really have to be designed and developed in such a way that there's more emphasis towards exports and taking advantage of bigger opportunities even beyond our local market. So we see that there's a lot more work to connect what we do as far as export promotion is concerned and industrialization. And there's an important weakness with regards to uneven coordination with other government departments. And that is a weakness that we are intent, even through this APP, to try and overcome. What we are seeking to do with this APP in particular, I think a couple of issues. One, the revision of the outcome has been accompanied by a more detailed set of outputs and output indicators which are more clearly aligned. So with this APP, we are improving alignment of the work. There are 151 output indicators in the APP. All of them are connected to the three overarching outcomes that I have spoken to previously. The outcome of industrializing South Africa, the outcome of building a more capable state, and ensuring that we are transforming the economy and making it more inclusive as we're doing that. The indicators are more precisely framed than in previous APPs, incorporating the learnings from 1 year of working with a new integrated approach. This APP also requires a different way of working for our department and its entities. Following the adoption of the APP, the department is putting a detailed implementation plan in place, which would be accompanied by training of staff where it is required. Changes to the strategic plan will see outcomes reduced from 70 to an integrated set, as we've said previously, of 3, allowing for a more coordinated and focused implementation. Now I'm going to go into the 3 focus areas that I've spoken to. I'll start with the focus area of industrialization, and that is on slide 10. In this area, the goal is to contribute to building dynamic firms in South Africa through a combination of efforts in partnership with the private sector, focusing on growth opportunities in the domestic market through localization, sector partnerships, beneficiation, promoting the green economy, and fostering higher levels of investment. We, in addition, are going through this outcome to build a wider export market, particularly on the African continent, to assist with scale, combining demand creation with supply side reforms, sector and firm level to build industrial competitiveness and support job creation. The industrialization outcomes consist of 5 focus areas or priority areas: sector partnerships and social compacts through master plans and firm level initiatives. This is where we would work with companies, we would work with sectors to agree on priorities that would leapfrog their growth. And based on that priorities, adjust also government support in order to ensure that we get the growth dividend that we want to see in the sectors, to, amongst others, as I've indicated previously, deal with the issue of creating sustainable jobs and dealing with the issues of inequality. Then the other priority area is localization and beneficiation and covert production initiatives, taking those forward, where we were able to localize production of specific be it equipment, be it supplies that were important to manage COVID, that production continues in South Africa, and we even look further to what else can be localized, as you would have seen with our initiatives as regards vaccines, trying to make sure that South Africa is also on the production radar as far as production of vaccines are concerned. The third area of industrialization outcome we're looking to is increased and diversified exports with other African countries and to other global markets, greening the economy through our green economy initiatives to shift to a less carbon intensive industry. And here we are putting it as an industrialization outcome, because we believe that greening the economy, the green economy initiatives, has to be also based on our capability as a country to produce whatever materials will be required to assist with the transformation of the economy towards a green economy. So we're not approaching this issue of climate change, of mitigation, and of transformation in a way that would leave us as buyers or customers of products that will be coming from elsewhere in the world. We are seeing ourselves as important producers of those products. On investment initiatives, we say here as an important industrialization outcome, investment initiatives to increase the levels of investment, to see how we can improve the ease of doing business, to see how we can improve on the various other levels of support that are in our toolkits, so that investment initiatives are successful in South Africa. And in this instance, it's both domestic investors and foreign investors, so that we improve the aggregate level of investment. Then on transformation, here in this area, the goal is to build economic inclusion through transformation programs in the three broad areas of addressing structural challenges to growth through active competition policies, particularly where concentration levels in the markets limit new entrants and small and medium businesses. Policies that promote spatial transformation, enabling more balanced growth through rural and urban and between provinces, strengthening inclusivity or transformation in the quality of growth, including broadening ownership and more inclusive corporate governance models. The transformation outcomes thus contain three focus areas, and said differently, that within the DTIC, we see a transformation as broader than just the limited definition that we have seen, which just focuses on who owns what. And we see it as deeper, including structural and spatial transformation. So the three priority areas there, starting with the ownership element, because it is important. We want to promote a greater spread of ownership in the economy, be it among Black industrialists, youth, and women, and even the participation of workers, including through a review of the impact of our current policy. Number two, structural transformation, addressing economic concentration and supporting SMMEs to participate more productively in sectors which are currently a subject of great concentration. Spatial transformation, promoting equitable spatial development through the district model, porting and integration of work into the 52 spatial units. The DM has already spoken about this area of work, developing a new model for district spatial industrial initiatives. This will include SEZs in industrial parks and various other forms of economic agglomeration that may be feasible, and also promoting the township economy. Then on the outcome of developing a capable state, again here we're just making the point that a developmental state must be capable of achieving the objectives that it sets itself. And for us, what that will involve is a new culture of partnership in the economy, partnership with the private sector and various other players in the economy, which is characterized by greater responsiveness and nimbleness by the department and its entities. And this will include us looking at our regulations, ensuring that they are smart, where we cut through red tape, ensuring fit for purpose and effective regulations, reviewing internal processes and legislation that may impede productivity in the economy and impede the ability of the stakeholders we support to do business with ease. And we're looking here at working closely with other parts of the state in order to forge a social compact with business and labor. So in the area of a capable state, 5 priority outcomes, building a strong capable state in the DTIC and streamlining the work of the department. When it comes to entities, building the entity and staffing, governance capacity, quick response and developing a shared service model and rationalization and integration of the work between the entities and the department. Both the ministers and the DMs have raised the importance of ensuring that we have entities that are fit for purpose and the need for us to review some of the entities to see how we can rationalize and optimize their operations. Then on smart regulations, we need to address red tape and compliance in internal processes and in legislation and regulation to enable a fit for purpose set of regulations across all the areas where the DTIC would regulate. So where there is no legitimate public goal that a regulation is now assisting us with, when that regulation imposes a cost to society that outweighs the goal that we are trying to achieve. Those are the areas where we will be looking for improvements. So with coordination within the state, it is very important, ensuring effective support function for other entities in order to help us achieve our APP outcomes. And then number 5, under capable state, would be to contribute to social compacts with our social partners. So the relationship between the 3 outcomes have a complex and overlapping aspect to it. With industrialization, what we do, we defining the focus of the DTIC, yet in conditions of South Africa that we industrializing within, in a way, the cuts that we've been dealt. It's imperative to promote transformation as part of that industrialization, both for reasons of economic inclusion and stability, and also to widen the talent pool and deepen the base for growth of our economy. At the same time, the DTIC has a legal mandate to transform and to effect transformation that would go beyond the DTIC's industrial sectors and covers the wider economy. So similarly, the competition policies are not confined just to the work of the DTIC. The capable state is a critical requirement for fruitful partnership with the private sector in order to drive industrialization. While similarly, the DTIC's mandate requires state capability in areas not confined to industrialization, such as consumer policy, regulation of alcohol, the lotto, etc. So we are dealing with a mandate that is quite complex. There are lots of overlapping relationships, and there is a need for us to also really be an important part of the coordination engine within the state. In the next slide, we now outline the coordination role that the DTIC would be playing, and we're concentrating here the work of the DTIC around those 3 strategic outcomes that would allow for better coordination across the DTIC and its own entities. The example that we set out is that as far as transformation is concerned, that firms in the township economy should be able to access dedicated resources from the MEF and the IDC, while being protected from unscrupulous lenders through the NRC's program, and can demonstrate the quality of their work through a new standard outreach by South African Bureau of Standards, while being protected from standard products through the National Regulator of Compulsory Standards and through ITEX permit and inspection regimes. This is just to illustrate how through one outcome of transformation, many parts of the DTIC will have to work together in order to assist enterprises and help effect the transformation that we want to see in the economy. Another example on the industrialization outcome, when entities are laying the ground for the green economy, NIMESA and SANAS will have to build a strong technical ecosystem that can incorporate new technologies like the green hydrogen. ECIC, this is an entity of the DTIC that provides export insurance, can then help those very same firms to access opportunities in the African market in as far as Africa's investment in renewable energy. And the Competition Commission could prioritize oversight of the energy sector to ensure fair access for the IPPs. Another area where you see that for us to achieve this outcome, a number of our own entities would have to come on board. As far as the capable state is concerned, entities have made commitments to reduce turnaround times, improve responsiveness, and also combat corruption. Similarly, collaboration continues beyond the DTIC entities. For example, the Constitutional Court judgment on the preferential procurement regulations requires greater work with individual organs of state and a revamp of the procurement legislation to give effect to the public policy objectives. Again, here I think it is important just to mention that while the DTIC is going to be hard at work, trying to assist a number of government departments and entities to buy goods that are produced in South Africa, we are doing so mindful that what the Constitutional Court did not say is that it did not question whether preferential procurement as a regulation is the correct thing to do. What it did say is that the legislative framework with which preferential procurement regulations were being taken forward is not appropriate, and therefore the triple PFA itself would have to be amended in order to accommodate some of the changes that we would want to see, so that government's muscle of procurement is really brought to the table to support job creation and local production of goods and services that government uses. Then on slide 15, we just illustrating there that the DTIC's approach to performance indicators, that the work of the DTIC entities will focus on the three focus areas that were outlined. The DTIC and its agencies will also be contributing to the ERRP, the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, which was announced by the President in 2020. The DTIC seeks to contribute to inclusive growth and job creation by pursuing, among others, increased levels of investment in the economy. And we do this through the work that has already illustrated success, where through the investment conference, among the other many interventions, we've secured pledges for fresh investment in South Africa of at least 120 billion, largely from the private sector. And during the 12-month period, and work with private firms to enable the pledged investments to be realized. We are going to improve industrialization in the economy through contributing during the financial year in selected projects to a target of 200 billion additional local industry output over a 5-year period, support for structural transformation of firms and sectors through customized packages of support of 22 billion by the DTIC and its entities, and that comprises of industrial financing, competitiveness enhancement programs, or working capital to SMEs. Want to maintain South Africa's share of manufacturing globally through our global exports worth 600 billion through support and risk cover on transactions that are provided in the main by the ECIC, and improve the composition of our exports with more value addition, and the composition of our exporters, so that we include more previously excluded persons in the export basket of South Africa, and the spatial distribution of those firms. So in slide number 16, the DTIC's approach to performance indicators. Here we are just explaining to the honorable members that in order to manage the quality of delivery in these complex areas, the DTIC has developed a number of products. This includes the financial support with a focus on Black industrialists, youth and women-owned enterprises, the green economy, which generates investment and local procurement. Draft bills for 5 pieces of legislation, including the Patents Bill, Design Amendment Bill, Companies Amendment Bill, Credit Amendment Bill, and the National Gambling Amendment Bill. The review and revision of regulations as part of the work program that we will be undertaking, and the legislation in the 5 areas that are mentioned, including anti-dumping investigation, safeguard investigation, tariff investigation, the BE framework, and the RITA policy. We'll also be developing MOUs and social compacts through the master plans that we will be developing, and those who will develop with the industry on investment, jobs, and outputs, the trade protocols and rules of origin proposals, export networks and export plans, which will be putting in place, SEZ and Industrial Parks Initiative, and we've already indicated a new framework for the DTIC spatial policy, strategic documents, including a roadmap for the new energy vehicles, green hydrogen commercialization, cutting red tape across all the programs of the DTIC and its entities, here identifying steps that will allow businesses to do business with a lot more ease within a regulatory framework that is appropriate. Improving processes, systems, and capabilities to monitor and evaluate the work that we do, provide entity oversight, combating corruption, and a shared use of our internal resources. We're looking very closely at ensuring that a large chunk of the DTIC budget continues to support the programs that we need to support, as opposed to the internal capacity that we need to do the work. So that right balance between ensuring that our finances assist us to improve processes, systems, and capabilities. In terms of further work that we'll be doing, it will include presentations, input, and engagement, both in cabinet, parliament, and NEDLEC, and other government entities, research reports that are very cardinal to the work that we do to make sure that we've got policies and responses that are well researched, that are thought through, and that assist us to get to the outcome in the most optimal way. And then, of course, action minutes and reports of the work that we will be doing. Chair, what I would then request is that I just do this presentation of slide 18 that summarizes the table that just outlines exactly what I have set out to the committee. And in this slide, we are reiterating again 10 programs of the DTIC, the 3 outcomes that I had already indicated, 151 indicators, the APP sets out these indicators for 2022-2023. This is an increase from the 80 output indicators that we had in the previous year. As far as the medium-term strategic framework is concerned, we are supporting priority 2 and 7, which cover economic transformation and job creation and a better world and better Africa. The work is going to be done by a cohort of 1,350 officials. And of those officials, 54% of those are women in senior management posts, and 3.9% are persons with disabilities. And our work will be funded by a budget allocation of 10.85 billion. Chair, I think with that, with your permission through the DM, I would then ask the CFO to then take us through the budget breakdown, and I am hoping that we will still meet your 3 o'clock deadline, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. CFO.
Thank you, DG, and good afternoon to the Honorable Chair and Honorable members. My presentation will cover the DTIC budget. As the DG has outlined and together with the Deputy Minister, the APC provides a framework in which the department will then plan and utilize its resources for the new financial year. As indicated already, the department has been allocated a budget of 10.8 billion rand, and this would be allocated amongst the 10 programs, which will largely drive the work and the outcomes being industrialization, transformation, as well as a capable state. In terms of some of the budget movements, we did note that there was a budget reduction from the previous financial year of from 11.8 billion rand to roughly around 10.6 billion rand over the medium term. But it's just important to highlight and to contextualize this decrease. In the last financial year, we did receive monies during the special adjustment budget of 1.3 billion rand to support the July unrest, as well as also receiving funding under the presidential employment stimulus to support the social employment fund. We also want to highlight that the social employment fund has been extended for an additional 2 years at a value of 1.65 billion rand. And the work in the trade policy program includes, amongst others, the work program of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And spending in this area is expected to increase from 226.8 million to 248.8 million rand over the medium term. With regard to the export program, here we see spending expected to increase from 443.1 million rand to 451.7 million rand over the medium term. As already outlined, the department will continue with the development and the implementation of various sector master plans as part of the reimagined industrial strategy. Just with regard on the next slide, which is slide 45. This slide sets out some of the alignment which we sought to achieve with the budget for this financial year. And in support of the reimagined industrial strategy driven by the master plans in various priority sectors, some of the financial instruments include the following: 4.4 billion rand over the medium term towards the automotive sector, 1.8 billion rand over the medium term towards the retail, clothing, textile, footwear, and leather sector. A new fund set up at IDC, which to a value of 197.5 million rand for the furniture growth fund, and this is to support enterprises in the furniture industry to improve their competitiveness, as well as to assist companies in distress for bankable turnaround strategies in order to grow the industry and to enable business to survive the current economic downturn. There will also be a further 121 million rand over the medium term towards the steel industry, as well as 1.1 billion rand over the medium term for global business services. Under the transformation outcome, 1.3 billion rand is appropriated over the medium term towards the Black Industrialist Program, as well as 4.9 billion rand towards spatial programs such as special economic zones, industrial parks, as well as the digital hubs program. Under the capable state, we've allocated 1.9 billion rand towards the operational budget of the DTIC, and this is really to support the core programs of the department and also to support the three broad outcomes. The next slide is a snapshot of the medium-term expenditure framework. You will see that the budget remains relatively constant over the medium term. And once again, to highlight that the industrial financing program, the industrial financing program receives the core budget of the department. It roughly accounts for an estimated 49.3% of the department's expenditure. And we've also noted that a large portion of this goes towards the manufacturing incentives. There's also support for the investment of the infrastructure support programs. And here we see the budget expected to increase at an average rate of 0.4% from 1.76 billion rand to 1.79 billion rand. The allocation for the next financial year, or the current financial year, for the special economic zones is 1.6 billion rand, followed by 135 million rand for industrial parks and 116.5 million rand for critical infrastructure. The next slide is a continuation in terms of the budget analysis. Here we can see how the 10.8 billion rand was apportioned. So roughly the 27 or 28% goes towards the DTI business incentives, followed by the infrastructure program, which is the SEZ and industrial parks that receive 16.67% of the budget. The external programs is quite an important program, and it's also part of the new integration and coordination framework. Here we are working quite closely with the DFIs such as the NEF and IDC. And here we've got two key programs, the Clothing and Textile Program, as well as the Social Employment Fund, which is housed at the IDC. Our public entities, which is 17 of them, receive roughly 19.5% of the total budget. Moving on to the last slide. Here is just an analysis of the budget amongst the different incentive programs. Here we looked into the budget received by the department, as well as the work programs at the IDC, the NEF, and also as well as programs that are also housed at the CSRR. In terms of manufacturing, it does receive 31% of the total incentives budget, followed by spatial, which receives 28%. As indicated, these include programs of SEZ and industrial parks. Under services, 11% of the budget goes toward the global business services, as well as the film and television production incentive, followed by exports, which are largely comprised of the export marketing program, as well as the export makeup scheme at the IPCIC. Under transformation, there is a budget appropriated for the Black Industrial Support Program, as well as a dedicated Women Empowerment Fund at the NEF. We've also seen a large portion of budget going towards innovation, technology, and skills development. And here we've seen some of the old program, but also a number of new programs which seeks to provide competitiveness, as well as bringing in and supporting technology and innovation. Lastly, under the energy efficiency program, a small portion of that goes towards a program that called the National Cleaner Production, which is a national program of government that promotes the implementation of resource efficiency and cleaner production technologies. Chairperson, I will pause at this point, and I think this brings us to the end of the presentation. I will hand over to the DG very quickly.
Just further indulgence of the members, so that we just highlight to the members the work that we are doing in the different regions across the three broad categories of focus of the BTIC. Just broken down per program. Just to indicate that in terms of the trade policy work, we're going to provide support to the export branch on the AFCFTA district dashboard. This dashboard just looks at every district and looks at the products that are being exported in that district, but it also then exposes the areas where we need to do more to make sure that there are export products in most of the district, and that our export basket, as far as possible, it is decentralized and expanded. So trade policy will provide updates once the FCFTA is fully operational, advise companies of opportunities which arise from the FCFTA through the different provinces. We've already engaged SAUGA as far as this is concerned, in order to sensitize SAUGA of our intention to broaden the participation of a number of districts as far as the exports are concerned, and then the report on the impact of trade policy decisions that I take will also be done at a provincial level. From a structural industrial development perspective, of course, this work it does happen in provinces towards SEZs and industrial parks and digital hubs, and we will also be identifying townships and township opportunities that will be supported, and we'll report on identifying private sector industrial nodes at district level for the sectors that the industrial policy work. In the way that we do with master plans, we are keeping a keen eye on the various districts where this work lies, and we'll be implementing sector interventions across all the 9 provinces. For consumer and corporate regulation, those part of our work that particularly touches a number of regions in South Africa. We'll be giving them a lot more focus. Registration of liquor licenses for distributors and macro manufacturers, and also education and awareness campaigns, just to ensure that our legislation, its effect, its ability to protect, and the responsibility that it rises in all the stakeholders, that is known even at provincial level. In terms of industrial financing, of course, our target is to ensure that companies in all 9 provinces are supported, and we are now making up that support at district level, again, in order to monitor areas where there's low uptake, and structure much more coordinated partnerships with relevant players in those areas in order to up the uptake. Program 7, and the most important area of work here, we're going to be targeting export promotion and capacity building activities in areas that are under-supported or underrepresented in our export basket in the year that we're going into. For investment, as we mobilizing our investment drive and participation in that drive, 2 key milestones for this year is the launch of the Eastern Cape and Limpopo one-stop shops, in order to make sure that even in those regions, in addition to Gauteng to KZN, into the various other one-stop shops that we've already launched, that in these regions also we improve the ease of doing business through the one-stop shops. On the competition side, that the outcomes of other mergers and acquisitions that may involve commitment by companies, that those outcomes would prioritize the different provinces that where there is underrepresentation, as we have seen with the work we've done with the Digsano Fund, where we support small construction businesses. And here it's in the construction of schools and TVET colleges. And this work has taken place in Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, Western Cape, Northern Cape, and the Free State. The funds will also provide funds for training of artisans in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. And then from a research perspective, again, just putting on the map all the 52 districts, mapping out the economic activities that are happening in those 52 districts, and then using that research to then identify in a much more pointed and targeted way the regions we have to work closely with in order to increase economic activity. With that, Chairperson, thank you very much, and I'll hand it over back to the dean.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. And honorable members, that concludes our presentation. So with your permission, Honorable Chair, we have saved a few minutes. We will be ready to take questions from the honorable members, and once again we'll go back to the FTDG and the senior management team that's present here to respond to the specific questions. And immediately after that, I would request that I will wrap up our response to the question.
Thank you very much, Honorable GM and the Acting DG for the presentation. At this stage, then, I'm going to give opportunity to the members of the committee to ask questions on the presentations. There are 10 programs. You can ask questions on each one of them or some of them, or all of them. Any hands? Honorable Boshoff, any other hands? Honorable Dango. Let's take the 2 hands in the meantime. Oh, yeah. Honorable Boshoff, you have the platform.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just need some clarity answers, if I may, please, and thank you for the presentation. We speak about climate change, and the presenter speaks about renewable energy, electricity, cars, and so forth. Can she tell us how this is going to be managed, especially in light of the current Eskom debacle? We are in stage 4, we're sitting in load shedding. How are we going to get electric cars on the road if we don't have a stable electricity network? Then she must explain to me how they're going to reduce the red tape, because this is one of the biggest problems that many of our small businesses sit with. They can't get access to loans, etc., because of the red tape issue. And then I'd also like to know the 336.8 billion pledges in new investments that she spoke of, that the president alluded to. Can she give us any feedback on how many of these pledges have been turned into not just pledges, but actual payments into the South African banking accounts. And then I'd also like to know if she can give us more feedback on the Mpumalanga SEZ, because this has been something that's been on the table for quite some time. And no mention has been made today with regard to that. It is something that was started a few years ago, but it hasn't been finalized. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Bishop. Honorable Dango.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. Two issues, and I think the one Honorable Boshoff is, in fact, alluded to is, how do we turn the pledges into actual cash? Do we have the personnel out there in foreign missions that can actually attract and turn those pledges into investments directly and link them with projects and companies in South Africa that can take advantage of that and move those pledges forward? That's one. Two is on the question of the furniture side and the clothing side. Is any of the funding going to be used to subsidize internships, subsidize people who become tradespersons through an apprenticeship program, so that industrialists and small industrialists can take people up in those industries and get subsidized salaries, so that we can actually get to moving furniture forward. I mean, at the moment we're importing furniture, whereas at one point we used to export furniture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dango. Any other hands? Okay. Okay, if I may also come in, DM and DG. I think in the last meeting where the APP of 2021-2022 was tabled, we requested that in the past the department used to, to give us the economic context, that is the global outlook in terms of the economy. It would that overview, also the GDP growth by sectors and provinces. It would give us the manufacturing sector performance, and also the South Africa trade with the rest of the world. It would, for instance, in terms of export, take, say, top 10 exports in terms of the commodities, and also the top 10 imports. It used to do that. And also the major trading partners, the top 10, and in terms of export, and the major trading partners in terms of the imports, the trade with BRICS partners, but also the trade with the within the continent. It used to give us that information and also employment by sector. So we had requested that last time. We thought that this time around, maybe and also including the investment as well. I'm looking at the old one that they submitted some years ago. In fact, not some years ago, it was in 2019. So we had requested if we could have that kind of information as part of the report. So we want to request that as well again in future, DM and DG. Just question for me with regard to, I'll try to go program by program on administration. I see there's one of the indicators is to improve the structure of the DTIC. I just want to check how often is this going to be improved, the issue of the structures of the TTIC, whether it is not causing anxiety amongst the staff that you keep on restructuring the structure of the department, which could cause anxieties. Others will be concerned about their positions, because from time to time, when are you going to say now everything is fine, so so that everybody is then settled? I don't know whether this got nothing to do with the restructuring, then that could cause some to be concerned about their positions in the department. I see also that as you keep on changing your approach to the performance indicators, because I was looking at your previous APP, as you correctly indicate that there has been a change in your approach, but it somehow it also confuses us to compare with the previous APP. For example, we don't see that in your, I've got in front of me here the APP that we tabled 2021-2022, you tabled on the 1st of June 2021. On it had the 100% eligible creditors payment made within 30 days. We don't have that in the current APP under administration. The issue of the vacancy rate is not indicated in the current APP, but we also don't see any targets on the audit outcomes. Usually some departments would come to us and have a target of a clean audit, for example, as one of the targets. But there's nothing with regard to that, unless you have couched it in some other ways in the under program 1. I saw in that you also, I think the other challenge I'm having, I've been receiving various reports for this APP. They tend to change. I know with the DTI, they always update their reports that they present. Sometimes you will not know, you'll still be having an old one, yet it has been perhaps changed. So I saw something about the 25%. I don't know if it is in this program for women, youth, I think, and people with disability. I can't seem to be finding it now under the program. Nevertheless, I wanted to check because yeah, I've got it here, 25%. It says procurement approved towards women, youth, and people with disability owned businesses. My question is, the president, I think in 2020, on the 9th of August, he indicated that there's going to be a 40% of women-owned businesses that will be set aside. Isn't this 25% contrary to that statement that was made by the president on the 9th of August in 2020? it was when he was addressing the Women's Day. I just want to check also under program 1, you are going to be establishing a fully functional anti-corruption unit. When is this? Is this going to be within this financial year? As well as this entities oversight unit will also be during this financial year. The other issue I wanted to check is with regard to the annual client satisfaction survey. I know Parliament also has that kind of a survey, client satisfaction survey. It regards members of Parliament as clients. So from time to time, it sends these surveys to them. But the difference with Parliament is that it does this on quarterly basis. But I see here the department is doing it annually. Wouldn't it be perhaps better to do it quarterly as well? Yeah, just if you can just respond to that when there's time to respond. But on the issue, also on the issue of the number of interns, I see that in 2023-24, you don't have any target in terms of the interns. Can you clarify as to why in 2023-24, but then in 2024-25, you have the targets of the number of interns that will be appointed. In 2022-23 is 31, 2023-2024 is 0, and then again in 2024-25, 31. If you can just clarify that for us. I'm happy also with this issue of the status report to the executive authority on the implementation of the social compact, so that Minister is aware of what is happening at NETLAC processes. Because one of the stakeholders, especially with regard to the issue of the social compact, he said there's not much, it's just talks about talks in terms of the engagement currently. But if there is a monitoring by the ministry as to what is it, something that is beyond just talks about talks. Yeah. Then on trade policy, I see that there's a identification, or in fact, it talks about the 5 priorities. I just wanted to know which are these 5 priorities: the finalization and submission of SA services offer in 5 priority sectors. If you can just remind us about those 5 priorities. But also on this program, I know we had, over the news over time, South Africa and India proposing a waiver on the application of certain provisions on the TRIPS agreement. How far are we with regard to that? But also still on the trade policy, the ITA bill. I saw that, in fact, the DG has consolidated in one slide all these bills. I know they have in various programs, but she consolidated them on one slide. So I might as well then ask all of them: the ITA, the patents bill, the design amendment bill, as well as the others I saw under consumer and corporate regulations. Some of the bills, especially companies amendment bill, It's been there for several years in the APPs of the department, but it never comes to Parliament to be tabled. Whilst I'm still on this bill, I would like also to check, because in the previous APP with regard to the liquor amendment bill, it was talking about the proposed changes, the review of the liquor amendment bill and proposed changes. That then gave us the impression that we were going to table a liquor amendment bill to Parliament, but we don't see that now. All that we see is that under that program, it talks about measures. I don't know what that means. It's not a bill that is being proposed. But also with regard to the National Credit Amendment Act, it was talking in the last APP, it was talking about the National Credit Amendment Act implementation plan. But we see now that it's one of the draft bills that is going to be tabled. I don't know when. What is the difference then between this National Credit Amendment Act implementation bill, plan, and the bill that is one of the slides that the DG presented?
We've lost you, Chairperson.
Mr. Dango, I think he got disconnected. I'm just going to follow up with him, Mr. Dango.
He's trying to connect again. Madia,
Okay.
so the chairperson, good afternoon, members. The chairperson is requesting that we should continue, the department should continue answering the question.
May I just add one question to the chairpersons? It's the question of the gambling bill. See the gambling bill back on there. Just to report back what has happened to the present gambling bill and the mediation thereupon. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Honorable Dango. Now, members, we will reply. Hopefully, the Honorable High will be able to connect before we finish with the comments. I would like, as we suggested earlier, that starting with Honorable Boshoff, that we take the acting DG to respond. And there are very specific questions that have been posed that relate to certain of the programs. The acting DG will indicate which of those questions will be referred to the respective DGs to respond to. Honorable members, I would like to hand over to the acting DG at this point.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you to the honorable members for the questions that you posed to us. I'll start with the questions posed by Honorable Boshoff, just in relation to the electric vehicles and the seeming contradiction between electric vehicles and what we see with ESCOM. I understood that was the point that the honorable member was raising. So there are various technologies as far as electric vehicles are concerned, and the one that we are most interested in is really the one where the energy is self-created in the driving process. So it's not all electric vehicles that would necessitate that the car must be plugged in, which I actually agree with the Honorable Boshoff, that it will be quite a thing when there's load shedding. So the technologies that we are looking at are the ones that external energy resilient in a way, and more based on the ability of that technology to really generate its own electricity. So there isn't really much contradiction per se, but of course that doesn't negate the fact that we are worried about the state of load shedding and its implication for the bigger work of government, and when it comes to us, the work that leads to industrialization. It is important that we stabilize the energy provision environment so that investors can go ahead with the business of investing with the assurance that there will be energy for them to undertake the work that they need to undertake. So the point is well taken. In terms of reducing red tape, you will see in the different programs, all the 10 programs, there are elements of reduction of red tape within administration, which is really an inward looking program, making sure that services are provided to all the other 9 programs of the department to improve their productivity. We're looking at areas of how do we respond fast, how do we provide the type of technologies that will assist the business of the core branches of the department, and how do we improve as far as turnaround times are concerned, and the quality, including of the legal advice that is provided to the rest of the DTIC. And we know that we are in a very legally charged environment where we do need to make sure that our policies and regulations, different interventions can stand legal scrutiny. So it's those kind of things that we make sure that the quality, the turnaround time is reduced, and we do it with the most bearable of costs. So it's not too costly for us to do the work that we do. And then in the other areas like really focus on the economy, it's all the branches going back and looking at their own business and indicating within their own environment, what is it that we need to do better. We agree with you, Honorable Bishop, that there has been there's been a lot of red tape that is directed at small enterprises. And here I'm making a distinction between legislation that is meant to accrue a public benefit, and that legislation that may be may have been appropriate for a particular time, but has lost its appropriateness, and yet it remains in the statutes. Those are the kind of things that we will be looking at to reduce here. And that's within the DTIC. I do need to indicate that we support the establishment of the office in the office of the president to deal with the red tape, because this will help us now to target including the municipalities and some of the bylaws that are really an impediment against doing business, that must be re-looked at, and sustained solutions that over time improves our legislative environment, our regulatory environment, to make sure that business can be done with ease, but it can be done safely, and that people are protected and empowered to question any unscrupulous business activities that they may need to question. So there is a balance there to be struck, but we do recognize that there's the important work intergovernmentally that requires to be done, and it's the work that we will be working with the presidency to take forward. On the pledges and how many have turned into investment, we can share the information with the members of the select committee. Our view of it is that a significant amount of what has been pledged has already been turned into investments, and that where the investment did not materialize, and what we did at the investment conference is also to acknowledge that and remove it from the pledged amount, so that we don't miscommunicate and create an impression that a whole lot of investment is coming in, which is not. But it was a very small figure. We will share with you that same slide that was presented at the investment conference. I'll ask my colleague Mauju to just deal with the question that Honorable Bosho asked in relation to the SEZ in Mpumalanga, and the question that Honorable Dango asked in terms of the pledges. We will send that slide, and that just indicates where we are with the pledges. We are in discussion with DECO. We do need to improve our footprint in as far as I think economic representation is concerned in our foreign missions. It doesn't necessarily have to be the DTIC, but the point that Honorable Bengo was raising is a valid point, that it has to be personnel that are able to attract the investment that we require in the missions that they are at, and that translate into bricks and mortar and employment right here at home. So that discussion is going on, Honorable Dano, with DECO, to see how we can just strengthen that area of our work, particularly those persons that represents South Africa abroad, and that in all areas, even where the VTIC may not have an office, there has to be a very strong capability to bring investments to open markets for our exports and to support our enterprises and entrepreneurs who may be struggling in the particular markets, bring us market intelligence on some of the difficulties that may be introduced by new legislation and new regulation in those host countries, so that ahead of time we are able to use all our instruments to secure our share of exports in those particular markets. So these are very important considerations, and I thank you, Honorable Dengo, for raising it. And then in terms of the economic context, I do recall that the committee did ask for it, and we will just make sure that in the next presentation that we provide the committee what the committee is asking. The issue of the 30 days of payment, you're correct in your observation, and that was the question from the chair, that it is not the, I think part of us as a learning institution, in the way that we set aside our targets, is that where over time we have achieved a target, that in a way graduates to perhaps even just a performance agreement, but doesn't itself just remain in the APP. You would have seen that in previous presentations you would have made, the CFO would have emphasized the fact that we've achieved this target, and in some instances reference would be made of us being able to settle some of these invoices even within a shorter space of time, like 2 weeks, 14 to 16 days, which is an average of what we are able to do. So that's part of the innovation, that where the improvement is now cemented, the systems are operating accordingly. And we also graduate that from the APP on the issue of the audit outcomes. I think that would be the same type of response. And then on the 25% procurement from women, we are seeing this as an incremental target. And I would ask the CFO to talk to it. But I think over the 3 years, we do get to that 40%, so that indeed we are not contrary to what the president has said, but increasingly we are building up our systems to be able to achieve that target. The anti-corruption unit and the unit that manages our agencies, yes, we intend to finalize that in this financial year. On the annual survey, we are starting with it as an annual survey, but we do take the advice and the observation of the chair that a quarterly survey may very well serve us much better than an annual survey. We're starting this, and we are testing it out to see how, particularly program 1, which is that inward-looking program, and it's similar to what the chair indicated, that we can strengthen how it supports the rest of the business much better. I've been advised that as far as interns are concerned, the reason you would see a 0 in the year that follows, and it's because interns have to be employed on a 2-yearly basis. So we won't generally take interns on an annual basis, and we'll take them on a 2-yearly basis, because they are employed for a period of 2 years. So that would be the reason why you see that as an area of as reflected in the APP. On the social compacts, we take the advice and the observation of the chair. We'll be monitoring this quite closely. I do know that there has been some movements here, and members of the executive have also been involved. But the issue that the chair has been raising, which we will be keeping a keen eye on, is that there must be a fast movement here, so that those the important social compact is finalized. So thank you, Chair, for raising that. Chair, on the issue of the trade policy, the 5 priority sectors in services, I'll ask Nikki to talk to that similarly to where we have the TRIPS agreement, mindful of the big grip that we were able to secure for the country and for many developing countries, that will also be allowed to manufacture some of the important things that are embedded in the responses to COVID, and then deal with that in a way that is globally compliant as far as the WTO is concerned. So I'll ask Nikki just to talk about where we are with realization of that, and ask my colleague Evelyn to deal with the various bills, the comprehensive amendment bill, the liquor, and also the national credit amendment bill, adding on to that list, so the gambling bill that Honorable Debo has raised. So maybe just to recap that my colleague Mautumu Ifyani deals with the Mpumalanga SEZ matter, that my colleague Nikki here then deals with the issues related to the trade policy. My colleague Dr. Edwin Masocha, the issues relating to the Companies Amendment Bill and the various bills that I had mentioned previously, and that the CFO, to the extent that the CFO will be necessary, in addition to what I've said, the presidential target on procurement of services, CFO, and perhaps if there's any other financial matter that I'd like to lift up, but colleagues in that order through the DM and Chair, with the Commissioner.
It seems, honorable members, it seems our chairperson is not back yet.
I am back, DM.
Oh, are you back? Are you back, chairperson?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being connected.
Yeah.
I suppose, Chair, you have had a suggestion by the acting BG. So our suggestion is that we should have additional responses from the BDGs. So starting with Mr. Malcolm Lefani, and then the other colleagues will follow.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, DM, BG, and Chair. And thanks also to Honorable Bishop for being consistent in making sure that the work is done in Mpumalanga. I must say that the Mpumalanga SEZ is a classical example of the projects that lay bare the weaknesses of the old SEZ model.
Sorry, DDG. Sorry, DDG. Perhaps while you're responding to the SEZ question from Honorable Boshoff, maybe you can also talk to other SEZ in the APP that you tabled in July. You were informing us about the progress with regard to the proposed SEZ of Far River City towards Fetahomo, Bujanelo, Platinum Valley, Wild Coast, Namakwa, and as well as Gauteng EC high capacity freight corridor for the expansion of the Ford and Tshwane Automotive, and also the Nkomazi SEZ. So I wanted you to just to respond on all of them instead of just responding on one. Okay, you can continue, DDG.
Thanks. Thanks. Is it working? Yeah. Thanks, Honorable Chair. I think maybe let me just try and recap on the Mpumalanga one. As I indicated, Chair, that it was just one of those classical examples of projects that laid bare or exposed the weaknesses of the old model of implementing SEZ, where we heavily relied on the capacity and the leadership of the province. And I must say that it's what necessitated this new approach that the DG presented on, to say that one of the things that we would be producing this year is a revamped model on the industrial parks and special economic zones. In Mpumalanga, we've been struggling with the capacity, but also even the cooperation from the province. But I think at this stage, we have reached a consensus in terms of the direction, but also in terms of the achievement thus far. We have been able to deploy the SEZ PMU that we have established at IBC, led by the former DG. They are intimately involved in the project. The challenge there was just capacity to implement. Through that PMU and with, of course, with our assistance, we have been able to establish a company. We have also deployed the former DDG of the DTSC, who's chairing the board, and the board consists of all the spheres of government. We've also persuaded the provincial government as part of the new approach where all spheres of government must be involved in the infrastructure development. So for this new financial year, we started this month, we allocated around 64 million, which will start basic infrastructure, including the operating costs for the SEZ. We have also requested the PMU to operationalize some of the investments that we've attracted. There's one big investment from Dubai we call DP World, which is a logistic firm. They will be setting up there. They've told us, I think, beginning of this year, that they would want to be operational in 6 months, which I believe, I think it should be around June, July. The beauty about this is that they would be putting their own money on the infrastructure, which is what we're also advocating for private sector involvement. The only challenge we're dealing with is around the EIA and township establishment on the land they've identified, mainly because they wanted to be closer to the railway line, which was still outside of the SEZ. So we're working with the province to ensure that we accelerate that EIA process. Also, one of the challenges that we had was around the what we call flyover on the L4, because the SEZ is around L4. So when the province submitted the application to SANRAL, the SANRAL were of the understanding that the SEZ would immediately have many companies, and they rejected the application on the basis that there would be a massive influx of traffic, and that ensured congested. As such, the application was not approved. We have appointed a traffic engineer through LDC as the DTSC to help the province, because we know that it was just going to take years. So that engineer has been appointed to deal with the traffic impact, but also to convince and work with SANRAL to ensure that there's clarity, because our view is that the rejection was based on a full-scale implementation, but the SEZ will be in construction phase for a few years. and would only be attracting investment systematically. By the time the traffic is high, we have built that flyover bridge. So that's insofar as the provincial, Goma's SEZ. I must say, Honorable Boshoff, based on the work that is currently undertaken and our involvement as national government, we are convinced that we will be able to achieve a lot. I think generally on SEZ, Honorable Chairperson, we are affected just like the country in terms of investment climate, but I think there has been a significant increase in terms of investments. In the last financial year, when we were reporting to the State Committee, we had, I think, over 145 companies operating in special economic zones. Currently, we have 167, and this is based on Q3 reports from SEZ. We're busy consolidating the Q4 report, which I think will be ready by the end of the month. In terms of the SEZ that are performing, we obviously still have Kuha contributing a lot in terms of investments in SEZs. At the moment, we, as indicated here, we have 167 with Kuha having a lion's share, is still having 54 companies operating in special economic zones, and of course building or constructing additional 8 factories. We have Kazas that is coming into the stream. They've operationalized 2 companies that are currently operating there. By the end of August this year, we have all 12 factories operating, with the 4th expansion being the 13th one. So I think in terms of the investments, pledges and investments that were reported on, insofar as the new ones, we're still doing quite well. I think in terms of, if I can just deal with those ones that have been giving us troubles, the other one was Musina Makado Chair. Musina Makado, for the longest time, we've been dealing with the rejection and the media issues concerning the EIA in the province. And these objections were simply based on the EIA application that also included a construction of a power station, a coal power station. And I think the pronouncement by Chinese also helped us to a certain extent, because once they pronounced, it meant that we're no longer proceeding with that power station, but proceeding with all the other manufacturing plants. The EIA has since been approved. So for Musina Makado SEZ, there is now EIA approval. The SEZ had 2 land parcels, the other land parcels had never had EIA problems. They are currently putting up infrastructure. As I indicated, with the new approach, we also forcing provinces and municipalities to contribute towards the infrastructure. The provinces contributed 600 million. They are putting up that infrastructure, bulk infrastructure. They would be, of course, requesting the DTIC for additional funding for the infrastructure, which is tiny compared to what the province has contributed. There is a number of investors that are also lining up. They've already requested the Deputy Minister to go and do a sorting for the infrastructure rollout. So that insofar as the Musina Makado share, I think we're also experiencing progress. There is other proposed SEZ, as the chair indicated, one of them being the Duwazi SEZ. I must say, Chair, also this one is also based in the Limpopo province in Skukune. There has been some achievements. There's a number of investors that are interested to locate there. Some of them, they indicated that they would want to locate in the next 6 months. We're working quite closely with the province. We are in the process of establishing a company. This is not an SEZ yet because they've not yet applied. What we did agree with the province on is that we're going to systematically implement this, because by the time we submit application to the DTIC, we want to have had a solid investment pipeline, no more theories or letters of intent, but we need solid investments. And solid investments will be investors that are already putting up infrastructure on the ground. We are entering into a quadripartite agreement with province, municipalities, local and the district. And one of those agreements, again, is around the contribution to the infrastructure. We also working with the private sector. There's a mine called Glencore in the region. They have already helped us by developing the industrial park. So the SEZ is not necessarily a greenfield, but it's a brownfield. There is a state-of-the-art infrastructure developed by the private sector. So again, there is going to be a very interesting development in that part of the region insofar as development. Again, we're working on the other industrial parks or SEZ such as Wild Coast in the Eastern Cape. We have a number of investors again interested to engage there. We're busy building the basic infrastructure. The province has allocated money for the bulk infrastructure for the fencing. The DTIC has also approved funding through a CIP to put a bulk infrastructure. So, Chair, we're no longer waiting for just paperwork to process applications, but we have agreed as part of the new model that when we implement SEZ, we are also immediately starting with the infrastructure. And to demonstrate viability, all spheres of government must contribute money for that infrastructure. And again, with the last one, there are many, but let me just touch on the two last ones. The Val River City SEZ. This one is also a very interesting work because it's part of what we are saying that SEZ must be about development of a region. It's no longer about just a first area, but we're intervening in that part of the world to resuscitate the former glory of that region insofar as the being a manufacturing hub of Gauteng. So we are having a multiple projects in that area. There is land parcels or areas that we've candidated for the SEZ development. There's also a projects that we've also been implementing, ranging from fuel cells to a tire manufacturing. But in this one, again, we would be having a massive regional development initiative in the civilian area. The last one is Northern Cape. The Northern Cape is anchored around a smelting or mineral processing. The application has since been submitted to the DTIC. It's under consideration. We're working with the province again to ensure that we accelerate the development. The smelter has already started doing some work. We have already registered the company with the province. There is an interim board appointed to drive the development. So, Chair, those are just examples of what we're doing on the ground, but the work on the SEZ, despite challenges, is continuing. We will also be presenting to you quite soon the new approach or the new model to the SEZ, but also a new approach to spatial industrial development, because part of the challenge that we have in the country is that in the absence of a coherent approach, you have everyone, every region wanting a special economic zone, even where they're not viable. But we bring in totality all these spatial initiatives under one coherent plan driven by the DTIC in terms of making sure that all our regions in the country achieve their maximum potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DM, DP, and Chair. I'll respond to the questions on the services sectors, the priority services sectors in the AFCFTA. It's transport, communication, finance, tourism, and business services. Is the priorities, and the aim is to finalize the schedule of the sector-specific commitments by June this year, and then we will move on to the other outstanding sectors and the negotiation of the specific commitments in those. In terms of the question on the TRIPS waiver, there's been a lot of discussions in the recent months between the main proponents and also those opposing the TRIPS waiver in the WTO, and we are moving towards, there is an emerging consensus that we're moving on in terms of an outcome on that. And that proposal will still have to go through the different committees in the WTO for formal approval. And the aim is to have that done by the 12th WTO ministerial by the 12th WTO ministerial conference. My apologies for that. The aim is to have the outcome approved by all of the ministers of the WTO, the trade ministers at the 12th WTO ministerial conference that will take place on the 13th to the 17th of June this year. Thank you.
Thank you, DM and DG. Thank you, Chair, and honorable members. From the legislative program and the questions raised around the progress on the legislation, I will start with the National Credit Amendment Act of 2019. So, Chair, you are correct that in 2021-22 financial year, we indicated that there will be an implementation plan for the implementation of the Act. So going back to 2019, when we gave a feedback to the portfolio committee on the legislation, there was an impact assessment study that we also presented to the committee to indicate some of the issues that were raised by the stakeholders in terms of the implementation. And some of those issues were highlighted throughout the legislative process before the bill was passed into law. So what has transpired was that there were consultations from that briefing. There were consultations with industry, with the minister and the regulators, because we were trying to see how implementation can be seamless and cost-effective and not to be burdensome to the fiscus. So on that basis, the discussions were ongoing. Then with the implementation, the decision was taken that instead of implementing the legislation that might have unintended consequences and challenges, it might be better to reconsider some of the issues that need to be amended. So that's why we are now referring to a National Gambling Amendment Bill. So the two processes, it was an act, but there were concerns raised first by the impact assessment study, and then through the consultations with the stakeholders, we realized that there were issues that needed further consideration. And the advice provided was that there might be areas that requires that the act be amended before it is implemented. So this is a prudent approach of trying to ensure that there is cost effectiveness, there is a seamless implementation of the legislation, and that it does not create barriers or unintended consequences, even to the vulnerable consumers it was intended to support and provide for. So it was meant to provide for debt relief for lower income earning consumers. However, because of the challenges that were raised by the study and by the consultations in terms of implementation costs and others, the vulnerable consumers might find themselves more affected negatively than positively. So that's where the status is. So the plan is to look at the areas of concerns and to bring forward the amendments to Parliament. And in terms of the timelines, because it's a new process, we will be looking at consolidating the issues, consulting further, and going into the different processes that are required when legislation is amended or when it's brought to the processes, legislative processes. So that is the credit one. On the liquor, there was a bill, Chair, and the bill was ready from the NETLEC process. It ready to be processed in terms of the parliamentary processes. It was there was NETLEC, and then it was returned. It was then tabled at one of the committees of cabinet committee, and there were certain comments made on that bill. So we have been reviewing it in preparation, but then when the pandemic occurred, we realized as a department that the issue of liquor abuse in the country was very was quite significant, and even during the different adjustments, adjusted strategy levels of the pandemic, we could see the impact of the liquor situation in the country and how it was impacting on different other issues. So what we then realized is that the challenge is much bigger than some of the provisions that we have in the legislation. So it has been under review. And now, in terms of the further consideration, following the experiences and lessons learned during the pandemic, consideration is to look at a coordinated approach, looking at the measures that could be put in place to address the issues in a more comprehensive and sustainable manner. So currently, we are consulting with other departments. We have started engagements from last year in the second quarter to engage in terms of the measures that can be coordinated. The plan is to still look at the legislation, but also looking at the integrated approach. So there is a coordinated approach that we are looking at to address these challenges. Given the fact that there is a need for a bigger approach, an impactful approach, instead of a piecemeal approach. So we are looking at this, working with other departments. So the next step we are planning is to approach cabinet with the discussion points to look at how do we strengthen our various measures as a collective in government. So hopefully in the process, we will be going back to the amendment bill in a stronger way with more focused approach, but not only as a DTIC, but also working closely with other departments and also to recognize them for the participation and how they have supported us in the different engagements as we are looking at navigating these issues, because we have realized that liquor abuse is quite a big issue in South Africa. It requires a concerted and integrated approach. Then the company's legislation, the company's amendment bill, Chair, you're correct, it has been ongoing for some time. So in 2019, there was a process at NETLEC from mid-year, and that process went on for some time. And there were lots of issues that needed to be addressed, but then there were several areas of disagreements between constituencies and stakeholders. And that process was then reopened again to try to streamline the issues, to simplify them, to get more understanding and consensus. Because we were thinking about just taking the issues to Parliament and then have a legislation that is highly contentious, highly challenged, and areas that are not properly maybe considered. So we gave it more time for consultation. And in the process of those consultations, there were substantive issues in the amendment, in the discussion processes that has resulted in a further bill that was then advertised and gazetted in October of 2021. So that process is underway, Chair. We are now considering those stakeholder comments and submissions. And then the intention is to finalize that process, then go to cabinet and attempt to introduce the legislation before end of this financial year. It looks at, the bill looks at the issues that were identified from our regulators, from the advisory committee of the minister from 2011 since the act came into effect. And it also addresses issues of disclosure in terms of reporting, disclosures of remuneration in certain types of companies, the shares of ownership in companies to address issues of money laundering and also to meet our international obligations. There are issues of red tape where processes are being simplified and clarified where there were no clarities on certain provisions, just to make sure that there is ease of doing business and the regulatory barriers are reduced. So there is issues of red tape that are being addressed by the bill. Another bill on the companies will be looking at the representation of labor or worker representation in boards. It's a very important intervention talking to issues of transformation and looking at how the board structures can take into account issues of workers. From the presentation by the DG and also various discussions with Minister, you note that issues of worker representation, worker opportunities for workers, worker participation are very instrumental. And this the bill will be looking at that in terms of the modalities of governance of boards working with representations from labor and workers. So that one is still a new process. It's a bill that will be developed. There will be further consultations. So it might be that the processes are more advanced in the next financial year, more than this financial year. The last one that Chair was raised by Honorable Dango is around the National Gambling Amendment Bill. The National Gambling Amendment Bill has been in the parliamentary processes. It was revived in this current administration. It's currently in the mediation processes, which it was referred in December in the NCOP to the mediation process. In terms of the update, Honorable Dango, I don't have the update, but it's something that as a department, we have undertaken to put this as one of our APP priorities, because we are, as a department, going to support the different processes where we are required to support in terms of the finalization of this bill in Parliament. So it is still in the parliamentary processes, and we can follow up maybe with the parliamentary colleagues in terms of where the processes are. But the last update we had was that it was tabled in December, and then it was referred from the NCOP to the mediation process. So that is still an ongoing process, but we have prioritized it for this financial year in terms of the outcomes of how it will be implemented. So I think those are the 4 pieces of legislation that are needed to give feedback on. And thank you very much.
Chair, if I could perhaps maybe respond to the question around the procurement targets. I think the DG has eventually responded to the question, but if I could maybe just add, this is a new KPI, but also it ties in quite closely with the transformational objectives of the department. So it's something that we do see as quite an important area of work. And it's something that we are working quite closely with the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, as well as National Treasury, to see how best we can implement this. It's important to note that the entire state procurement goes through the centralized supplier database. And we've seen how best the centralized supplier database can be used as an instrument to actually drive this. Because it's quite an important area. Currently, the CFD contains information around directorships of all companies, but not particularly ownerships across the board. So we working quite closely with the Department of Women. We did elevate this discussion with them. But I think as we look to implement this, we are building internal systems which will then gradually move us from a 25% target to a 40% target over the medium term. Chair, I will pause at that note. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So that the CFO was the last one. So if just quickly share through you on matters relating to ESCOM, raised by Honorable Bosho. We all know that this a serious challenge that we are facing. But we're making progress. Honorable members would remember that with bid window 5 was had been delayed. It has now been expedited. The bidders have been finalized. In the last week, the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy announced bid window 6. He has also communicated that by the end of this year, he will announce bid window 7. So action is being taken. In respect of electric vehicles that Honorable Bishop is talking about, we remember that our minister announced an investment by Ford at a special economic zone. So what we're doing there is that for that investment to go ahead, we're looking at a new feeder there, because as soon as production starts, they can't lend itself to the kind of disruptions that are occasioned by the power outages. So we will deal with the issues relating to new energy vehicles. With regard to Nkomazi, Honorable Bishop, just to as a matter of emphasis, in the coming weeks, I will go to Nkomazi and will extend an invitation to you. We have taken quite a long time, but we're making progress now. We're sure that Dubai Port World will locate there quite soon, as Mr. Modifani was saying. So we just have to sort the issues relating to with PRASA to connect to the N4 and Transnet with relation to ensuring that the SEZ can have access to the railway line so that we can get to the Maputo port. So with that one, we will be able to ensure that we can locate a major investor in that special economic zone this year. So we'll be able to give you feedback. Hopefully we'll meet in Nkomazi when we visit there. So the same thing with the others that Mr. Modifani was reporting on. So we think that we're making progress in the many others that were stuck. The Musina Makado was stuck, Fetafomu, Tubati, the same difficulties. We think we're making good progress there. Tomorrow, I'm on my way to the Eastern Cape. One of the things we're looking at is just to look at what progress is being done with Mfuha with regard to the Wild Coast Industrial Park, will come SEZ in at a future stage. So we'll have a discussion with them there to see how best can we fast track our work, the work that is being undertaken in that industrial park. Honorable Dango, the issues with regard to the pledges and attracting more investment, reducing our foreign nations. We're led by the Department of International Relations and Cooperation a few weeks ago to launch what is called a coordination mechanism for economic diplomacy, focusing on the African continent. So that's something that we can replicate as soon as we have learned from it. But it will ensure that the whole of government can coordinate to ensure that we can drive penetration into markets and to ensure that we can attract more foreign direct investment. So that coordination is, I think that's an important step that has been taken. So with regard to Honorable High Chairperson, we are ready with regard to the information that is required to give context to what is being done in the detailed work of the APP. So we've taken that into account. With regard to admin, I thought that the DG will deal with the difficult question with regard to what's going to happen with the employees of the BTIC, what is this work that we undertaking, is it going to cause anxiety inside of the BTIC? Look, the minister's approach is we need to ensure that we can improve the performance of BTIC through greater integration, ensuring that they can be more focused. So what is called optimization is to ensure that we can use the BTIC resources in a way that we can make an impact. So we do recognize, and I would understand, Chair, from your other life, that we've got to be very cognizant of what would happen, because we don't want to start a process that creates anxiety, and all you do for 2 years is to manage that anxiety instead of focusing on the outcomes that we have identified. So it is something that the minister is quite mindful of. So we'll be very conscious of how we deal with that. So with regard to the social compact, you're quite right. The progress has been quite slow, but it's something that we're acting on. We should appreciate that we are in a difficult space compared to a few years ago, and including the relationships with those social partners. So there's a great deal of trust deficit there that impacts not on the issues of what should be done on social complexity, but it's simply because the levels of trust are quite low. It is something that we've got to address to ensure that we can make faster progress. Otherwise, let me thank the DG and the team Chair on the specific questions that they responded to. So that's where I would like to stop, and you will guide us, Chair, if you still want us to respond to other questions.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, DM. I just want to check if honorable members have a follow-up question. I still have a follow-up question because I got cut. Maybe we should learn from the department by bringing everybody physically in one venue. Maybe we should also apply to the chair of committees that we go back to Parliament so that we don't get kicked out from time to time. Honorable members, if there are any follow-up questions, you're free to come in. I take the point that was raised by Honorable Bosho. Perhaps what we need to be doing is to invite a department, but specific programs, so that we get a more detail with regard to those specific programs, DM. For example, some of the outcomes and outcome indicators, they are meaningless to members when you have an outcome indicator that talks about a report, and that there'll be these number of reports, and that is an outcome indicator. It's meaningless to members because they don't know the contents of those reports. So therefore, it is important that we invite specific programs to come in detail with regard to the contents of those reports and the activities, because what we need to measure are the activities, not just to say there will be a report. For example, you cannot have an indicator, maybe say on women, and all you need to do is just say we'll have a report on the representation of women, and there's no detail as to what percentage that representation will be, but the outcome indicator is just there'll be a report on women representation. So that would be meaningless to members because you don't have the details in terms of what percentage that representation will be like. Because if you look at all the programs, most of them, they got a number of outcome indicators as reports. Others will be one report, others 30 reports, 2 reports. And for members, those are meaningless until you deal with the content and the activities that are contained in those reports. So therefore, the way forward for us as a committee will be to invite a program. For example, if we invite a trade policy, we must be able to know what issues MC12 is going to be dealing with. The question of the trade rules, the issue of the electronic commerce, the fisheries subsidy, agricultural subsidy. We need the details with regard to those issues, as well as other issues with regard to the Africa content-free trade area. So we need details around those issues. So from time to time, we'll be inviting departments on specific programs. And we'll do the same with the special, what is it called? Because they changed the names of this, the special industrial development. So that we get details around the issue of the SEZ, each one of those that are still have pending applications, and those that are operational. What investment are they attracting? Those that are operational. What are the stumbling blocks with regard to those that have a pending application? So that we get an update with regard to those, including the industrial park. I'm very concerned because, as you know, DM, that where I'm deployed in terms of the constituency is an area where there's an industrial park. My concern is that in terms of these phases, the problem with them is that they don't have time frames that a particular phase 1 will go on for, say, 12 months or 6 months. After that, then you get to phase 2. Phase 2 will be this and that, and then you go to phase 3. So that those are some of the concern. For example, in Dimbaza, currently, for the past 2 years, there's been this installation of this high mast electric on pillars or poles. Nothing more. Previously, it was a fencing of the industrial park. So there are no factories except those old ones that were before, that were not vandalized, that are operating there, and no new investment taking place. So those will be the details that we will require, but also in terms of all those that the DDG was responding to, we would like them to be in writing before we invite the department on those, as well as the financing or the industrial policy, especially around the master plans. So we will need more details with regard to that, whether each of the partners are meeting their commitments with regard to those sector plans. I think the other issue that was raised in the APP of last year was that the department is consulting on the issue of the procurement bill. I don't know whether this is not supposed to be a treasury bill, or but I know that the department also has a vested interest on this bill. But in the report of the APP, it was saying that there's a consultation that is taking place with NETLAG. And one of the stakeholders is saying that bill has not yet been tabled in the NETLAG. But the APP last year was saying that the consultation is taking place and with NETLAG. And that was more than a year ago, but this bill today, DM, is not yet at NEDLAC for consultation. But another concern is the one on the procurement, the preferential procurement. The concern there is that the regulation that have been issued in March, they silent on the issue of a local component with regard to the regulation. So that is another concern. But as we're saying that they say there's no reference in local procurement in the regulations that have been issued. So that's why then we're saying that we will be inviting these programs individually, or we could combine some of them, maybe invite two to report on the work that they are doing in detail, specifically the trade policy, the industrial policy, the special industrial development, and the industrial financing. So those would be the ones that we will really be interested in, because especially their role in provinces, the details with regard to their role in provinces. The other issue, DM, I would like to raise, I'm happy that most of the programs, they talk to this issue of red tape. But it would be good if there could be within the department a structure that would be similar maybe to that that is established or being established in the presidents, so that there's a coordination first within the department itself, as it link up with the presidency red tape unit. It does that in a coordinated fashion. Know that each department will, each program on its own will deal with the presidency red tape unit. It should be something that is coordinated together with the entities of the department. Because DM, from time to time, we get complaints from members of the public about also the policies. The department would have policies such as the Black industrial policies, but some of the requirements, there are complaints around those requirements, and people come to us. I was talking now to Chulu, because there's a gentleman who's been on my shoulders since last year. Normally when these complaints come, I just give them the address of the chairperson of the NCOP and say, just have it as a petition, send it to the, I give them the address and the email address, and it goes to the chairperson, and the chairperson does his part. But unfortunately, when they're not getting the result, they come back to me. Just before the meeting, I was talking to Chulu. There's another one who's complaining about the policy of the Black industrialists, the requirements that is making it difficult for them to participate in that particular program. So I'm saying, therefore, part of this red tape should also allow individuals to make submissions as well. I'm not saying you should change the policy, but you should consider the issues that they are raising. Others could be administrative, others could be policy-related issues. So I'm not going to ask questions. I'm just now just summarizing with regard to some of the concerns that are being raised to us as this committee. I think that those are the issues, unless if members also have issues that they want to raise. Otherwise, we will then come to the other internal matters of the committee. Honorable members. Not. Maybe let me go back to you then, DM, for the parting shots. Closing remarks on your part.
Thanks very much, Honorable Chairperson, and thanks to the honorable members for their questions. Chair, we have taken into account the comments that you just made, and quite certain that the DG has taken note of the issues that you just raised that we've got to take forward. So, because we had replied to the questions, Chair, I think at this stage would be happy that you release us so that the committee can continue with the rest of its work. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you so much, DM. Maybe next time we'll invite you physically in Parliament. We can see that you can come physically, but so we'll invite you to Cape Town next time. Thank you very much. We'll perhaps meet again when we debate your plans as part of the budget vote processes. Thank you so much. You are released, DM, and your team. Honorable members, the committee secretary can make sure that we flight the minutes. I don't know if we have, we still have the quorum. If not, then we'll have to defer the minutes.
Hi, it's my dear.
Yes, hi, Chair. We don't have a quorum, Chair.
Oh, okay.
No, we don't have a quorum.
That therefore means therefore we'll have to defer then the minutes to the next meeting. Is there anything else, any announcement? From your side, committee secretaries?
From my side, no, Chair.
No,
Grace?
Grace?
And from my side, there's nothing, Chair.
Okay. Now let me thank the honorable members then for the attendance and the participation. The meeting is adjourned. I think next week we'll be meeting with the Department of Small Business Development for their annual performance plans. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Goodbye.